you guys doing? Welcome to episode 3 of the Real Estate Talk with Brahan and Abel. I'm your host, Abel Mansur.
And I'm Burhan Khan.
How you guys doing today, Brahan?
Doing well. How about you, Abel? How's your Saturday going so far?
Saturday's going good, man. You know, the weather's kind of changing in the DMV now, so I'm kind of excited for it. This humidity in this area is something else, man. So
yeah, you know, we're entering the fall season, so it's a change in the weather, change in the climate, and you can see the colors in the leaves changing.
I'm welcoming to that, man. The heat here is something else, and I'm from Southern California, and I know hot, but we get under a tree, man, we're good. Here, It's a different story, man. You can't escape the heat.
That's true. Yeah. So here it's a little different versus LA.
Definitely.
Here, you know, you got to get used to the climate. You know, we don't get exactly LA weather.
Yeah. I mean, we have pretty much, one season over there? There's all 4 seasons almost over here. So that can be enjoyable. But, you know, being from Southern California, I'm like, what is this?
Yeah,
but
that's true.
It's all good. So how you doing today, man? Let's get right into it.
Definitely. So we're going to talk about the closing process.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever a buyer or seller, for that matter, goes through the sales process of buying or selling a house, everyone looks forward to closing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what do they go through with the closing process? You went through with the purchase transaction earlier this year, Abel. What did you go through when you went through the closing process?
So for those of you that are listening that don't know, closing happens when you get under contract. So you find a property that you like, you get under contract with that person. Now we start the process of transferring that property to the last owner to you. So we call that process the closing process. Then there's a closing date. Typically, it's about 30 days, right?
Correct. Typically, sometimes the seller wants it done quicker, 2 to 3 weeks. And especially if it's a cash buyer where there's no loan involved, all you need is a title search. And it is possible in 2 to 3 weeks or less.
Unless you're under like an FHA loan or anything like that, those can take kind of a little bit more time if you're going through that process, right?
Correct. If it's an FHA loan or, if it's a loan where you'll have a lot of problems with underwriting, it could take even 2 months or longer depending on the loan and how much underwriting the buyer has to go through in order to get to closing.
Yeah. So when you get under contract, if you don't have any contingencies, anything like that, this is the closing period. So if you have a home inspection contingency on there, you have that time frame to get into that home contingency. Sometimes they give you 3 days, sometimes you have 7 days. Let's talk about that process.
So the home inspection contingency, you have a certain time period to get out of the contract. And then after you get the home inspection done, you want to see exactly what's wrong with the house. The inspector will give you a list, and then you can use that contingency to actually either A, get the price lowered, or B, get everything in the house fixed by the seller. So, and you want to get a licensed contractor to make sure that someone knows what they're doing when they get the property fixed.
So when you go under contract, you go under one or two ways, right? You can go under contract with no contingencies. Meaning, hey, we want this house. We're going to buy this house. We don't need to do an inspection. We don't need to do any of that in order to go forward with the contract we're going to buy regardless. Now, you can go ahead and get those inspections and things done. But if you go under contract with no contingencies, you're just going from we just signed the contract to the closing date. Everything else in between is null involved in a sense because you've signed the contract. You're going to go through with it. Unless there's other ways to get out of that contract or you both agree to not be in that contract.
Correct. And you know what's funny? Over the last month or so, there seems to be a shift. Year to date through August, a lot of buyers would submit offers without any contingencies. But now, since it's slowly becoming more of a buyer's market, a lot of buyers can put more contingencies, whether it's the home inspection contingency, like you mentioned, the appraisal contingency, the financing contingency. There are a lot more contingencies in play because there are less buyers on the market and more people are slowly selling their houses.
Yeah. So for those of you that are listening, so when you go under contract, contingencies essentially are terms that need to be met in order to move forward with the contract. So you have things like home inspection contingency and appraisal contingency. what are some other contingencies?
Financing contingency.
Financing contingency. Those contingencies have to be met in order to get to closing. So it is highly advised. I would tell people, if you don't have to, if the market is not as competitive and you can give up some of these things, go ahead and get these contingencies. Go and see what type of home it is. See if you can get the financing for this home, if the bank would even give you the money. So if you give up a lot of those contingencies, you're just going to go right into the contract, and you can end up losing your earnest money deposit. You can end up, having to owe your realtor, having to owe people for the time that they spent if you don't go through with this contingency. So they get through these contingencies. They do the inspection. The seller fixes all the things that needs to be fixed. Your financing is good. The appraisal appraised for what you're paying for. What happens when you get to the closing, when you get closer to the closing dates?
So as you're approaching the closing date, it's funny, during the contract period, let's say it's the typical 30-day time frame, right? The beginning up to the home inspection period, and then as you're getting the loan approved, usually that's a busy time. And then you have this long quiet period. It's usually 2 weeks. Everyone forgets about it. People are still thinking about it, but it's a quiet time. And then comes a closing period, right? Mm-hmm. The lender gives something known as a closing disclosure to the buyer, and the agent should review it as well. You have to make sure the closing disclosure matches the loan estimate. Sometimes, not always, and this happens less often, the lender's closing disclosure will have higher numbers than the loan estimate. Mm-hmm. You always, as an agent and a buyer, want to make sure that the closing disclosure has the same estimate as the loan estimate, mm-hmm. if not lower numbers. Mm-hmm. More often than not, they'll intentionally give you higher numbers in the loan estimate, and you have to make sure, for your best interest as the buyer and the buyer's agent, that you have lower numbers as far as closing costs, mm-hmm. and the closing disclosure than they were in the loan estimate.
So on that closing disclosure, there are things like your home insurance, your title insurance, the cost that it breaks down basically everything that you're paying, that you're coming out of pocket, that the seller is paying for, and how that's broken down. So what are some of those things that are on that disclosure?
So you brought up a great point. There's title insurance, right? Mm-hmm. So there's two types of title insurance, and a lot of buyers don't know about this, that you typically have to pay for. There's lender's title insurance and then owner's title policy, mm-hmm. that you had to pay for at closing. But believe it or not, the owner's title policy is actually optional.
Optional, yeah.
You can go in there and tell the title company, I don't want to pay for this. The lender's title policy is mandatory.
Mandatory. You can't get away from that one.
You can't get away from that one.
See, now, title insurance for me, it's a little tricky. You know what I'm saying? So my last property, we went ahead and got title insurance. Did I think I needed the title insurance? No. I figured this is a new build. The only owner prior to that. There isn't any easements where people can walk through and things like that. The square footage, everything was tied away. But I went through with the title insurance because I had such a horrible experience with my last lender. We went into this contract, and that closing period, the 30-day closing period that I had, I was in such highs and lows, and that by the time I got to the time where we're closing, I'm like, title insurance, yeah, let's get the title insurance, because I just don't know. Like, I was just so stressed out. So I say that to say, like, your closing period can be a very seamless, peaceful time, or it can be a chaotic ups and down of emotional time. So like you said, title insurance is one thing that you have to consider and make a judgment on that, right? So I won't advise anybody to not get it, but try to figure out, is this important? Should I get it? How old is this house? Is somebody going to down the line come back to me and say, my grandfather actually owned this house and we never passed this to that person and this person and all that? So it covers you on things like that, right?
So what title insurance basically does is, if for some reason, let's say you're the third owner of the property, right? You bought it from someone who was the second owner, and they bought it from someone else that was the initial owner who built a property on the land, right? Mm-hmm. First owner comes back and places a lawsuit against you saying, oh, hey, there's an easement issue or an encroachment issue, or who knows what the lawsuit could be about. That title insurance protects you. But if you do your due diligence and research everything on the property yourself and figure, oh, hey, there's no reason for this title insurance, then you're fine. You don't really need it. You can also negotiate with the title company and see how much they're charging you for title insurance. If you feel they're overcharging you, ask them, hey, can you cut the price a little bit? Also, look around for other title companies. Talk to your agent and tell your agent, hey, they're charging me a bit too much. Some title companies charge $2,000-$3,000 for title insurance.
Yeah, and now is that and it's a one-time payment also. So just so everyone knows, it's a one-time payment. You don't have to pay it every month, just like how your normal insurance, or annually, just like normal insurance. It's just a one-time payment that you pay into, and you're essentially covered for life.
Correct, but think about it. Let's say you buy that house now and sell it next year.
Yeah.
You're covered for life, but title companies keep on making
They
more
charge
money.
the next person for that title
and the
insurance.
next person. So just think about that for a minute.
Yeah. And I mean, again, like, one of the things is before you even get to the closing table, they have to clear title. So
Correct.
You have to go through these things where they got to make sure that nobody else has ownership to that property and all those things. So in a way, it's kind of double dipping in a sense, right, for them, because they go through making sure that title's clear before they close. And then once you get to closing, they're like, well, do you want to pay for this as well too? Again, nobody's perfect, so sometimes people miss things, sometimes things happen, so you want to cover yourself for that. But you have to weigh that out and say, if you're strapped on closing costs and you barely have enough to even close, and that's just another extra expense that
is unnecessary.
Exactly.
But at the same time, to give credit to title companies, they help you out by doing due diligence on the title. Let's say the seller of the property has all these liens, first mortgage, second mortgage. They have a lien from the IRS, bankruptcy, other liens that you don't know about. And they have just enough to pay off all those liens, right? And then you get the house. It's the title company's responsibility to take care of all that for you and get you a clear title. And the only lien when you acquire the property will be your first mortgage.
Exactly.
Yep.
Now, there's also other other numbers that are on there that you'll see, right? So they'll give you the home insurance. Now, home insurance, if you have a mortgage, is something that's mandatory. Unless you're buying it all cash, you have to get home insurance. And that home insurance is part of your closing cost. You pay that at closing, full amount a year ahead. You pay a whole year ahead. Then every year after that, it gets put into escrow. Now, what they don't tell you is that you can pick your own home insurance company. So if you want to bundle it with your car, if you want to bundle it with another property, you're able to. I highly recommend people to shop around. Get
Correct.
the best deal that's possible out there for you. You may not need certain coverages. Don't listen to what I tell you. Don't listen to what Brian or your lender tells you. You have to do the due diligence because this is your money. This is your property. This is what's going to work for you, right?
Correct. So your insurance will be part of your escrow. Escrow usually contains your insurance and taxes for the property. Taxes is not negotiable. We all know that.
Right.
The county taxes you as well as the state, but insurance, you can always shop around. More times than not, the lender will just assign you insurance. Maybe they get a referral fee. We don't know that. But you have to ask the lender and your agent, as well as the title company, hey, did you assign me insurance? No, I want this insurance, whether it's insurance company A, insurance company B. Shop around and see who gives you a better rate.
Exactly.
And the other funny part about insurance, if there's any damage to your property, whether it's a leak or roof damage, whatever the case may be, a lot of people don't actually file insurance claims to have that repaired. Because if you just contact your insurance company, you may have to pay a deductible, $500 to $1,000, but those repair costs can be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. Then they'll write you a check.
And now I also recommend before you contact your insurance company, figure out how much that is to get those things fixed. So if it's less than what your deductible is, you might as well go ahead and get it fixed. Because if you go ahead and say, no, I'm going to get insurance, but it's less than your deductible, now you're getting a point put on against you from your insurance company, and that's going to lead to higher cost in the future. So always weigh out what it is when you get to that point, right?
Correct.
So the next thing on the disclosure sheet is going to be a home warranty. Home warranties, again, are optional.
Correct. They're optional. And home warranties, this is a negotiation power you have when you're writing a contract. Try to get the seller to cover it. Home warranties, what they typically do is they cover appliances, the HVAC, the water heater, and let's say, especially the biggest part is the HVAC. Let's say it goes out. We're talking a $7,000 to $10,000 expense right there. And what home warranty companies will typically do is they'll try to come and just repair it. They don't want to replace it, which is fine, especially if it's an older unit. They'll just get around every year to just repairing it. But what's interesting is if you annually have your HVAC unit just serviced, then it can last a lot longer than expected.
Exactly, and a lot of those times it's small, short maintenances that you do in the house yearly. Clean your gutter rails, get your HVAC system serviced every year, get your water heater drained periodically and then refilled, or however that process works. If you keep up with a lot of those maintenance things in your home, the life of all your appliances, the life of that home in itself will last. Do the caulking from time to time. Check your caulks from time to time. It makes a big of a difference when you're going into, reselling your home or just keeping the life and the age of that home, right?
All the time people ask me, how is this house built in the year 2000 and it looks like it's completely destroyed? No one took care of it.
People don't take care of it.
And meanwhile, you got this house built in 1960 and it looks like it's well taken care of. And, it's almost a brand new house.
Yeah.
It's very simple. Older houses that are well taken care of look like they're brand new houses.
Exactly.
And houses that are built, in the last 20 years, if they're not taken care of, they need a complete gut job and renovation.
Exactly. And then that goes back to home warranty. So is a home warranty good to get? Well, in my opinion, I always think, extra coverage, if you can afford it, is always good, right? But you also have to keep in mind that if you get a home warranty and something happens a week after you move into the house, you can't really do nothing. They give you a grace period. I think it's like 30 to 60 days before you can file a claim against that house. So
Correct.
You got to keep that in mind as well. And if you go 1 year, now those home warranties are paid yearly. They're not a one-time payment for the life of your home. I wish it was like that, but it's not like that, right? So you got to weigh it. Is this something that's going to be worth? In your first year, if you go and your home warranty $700 to $1,200, and you don't pay or you don't call or make a claim on that at all within that year, well, is it going to be worth it for you to do it the second year? Will those things be covered by your home insurance rather than
The home warranty.
The home warranty. Now, usually those home warranties cover major appliances, so like your stove, your fridge, your water heater, your furnace system, your AC system. So those cover major appliances, but your home insurance wouldn't necessarily cover those unless you get it. So you might be able to bundle it with your home insurance. So you got to do your research on that as well too. But that's something
Correct.
that goes on your disclosure that you got to pay attention to. I always tell people, when you get that disclosure, pay attention to it, read it each line, go over it also with your agent, and kind of weigh out your options.
Yep, and that goes from a buyer standpoint as well as a seller standpoint. The buyer, they have all these line items when it comes to the lender fees, title fees, taxes, insurance, home warranty, and other fees as well. The seller, two of the biggest line items are usually paying the agents, and then they also have to pay taxes if you have an HOA on the property. And when you're selling your property, if you have a loan, you have to make sure you contact the mortgage company and ask for a payoff. Sometimes the title company helps you with that, but make sure you get the proper payoff amount to make sure the lien is released as of the closing date. A couple other things the seller usually has to do is cut off the utilities. If you leave the utilities on, believe it or not, the buyer may take advantage of that. Let's say your closing is at the end of September, and then you don't cut off the utilities.
Until February or something.
Yeah, then you're paying for the new buyer's utilities for how many months?
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you have like auto pay or something set up to your
Correct.
account, you're essentially doing that.
Exactly.
And on the seller side, it's always good to consider, like, if it is a selling point is saying, like, if you have so much equity in the house and $700 or to $1,200 is what a home warranty costs, you might use that as a selling point to say, you know what, I'll cover that home warranty for that first year.
Correct.
That might take you over the hump in getting the deal, getting the price that you want, and give the new buyer some peace of mind, especially if you're confident with all your equipment that's in the house. If you kept up with it, or you're the one that knows if you kept up with it, you're the one that knows if you have issues or don't have issues. So that might be something that, you might want to consider.
Correct, exactly. Just give up the $700, or would you rather get all these items fixed?
Exactly.
Sometimes the buyer has a vote of confidence that over the next year they don't have to worry about it. And believe it or not, even from a buyer's perspective, sometimes when items are covered, other items surface. That's why you need insurance and home warranty to take care of everything in the property.
Because they might, if they have a home inspection contingency and they find, 20 things that are alarming and or a concern and they want you to fix it, you can counter with them with saying, I won't get those things fixed because they're fine. But what I'll do is give you a home warranty for the first year, which can end up saving you money instead of getting a contractor to come in there and fix all those things, and you end up paying $10,000 to a contractor versus saying, hey, I'll give you $700 for a home warranty for the first year.
Correct. One other thing the buyer usually has to do before the closing is you get a walkthrough in. So the walkthrough is a day or two or maybe the weekend before closing. You go back to the property. And then you go and make sure everything is the same. There's not a gaping large hole in the wall. The microwave didn't fall down. The oven isn't messed up. Or, the deck didn't fall apart. So when you go to the walkthrough, just test everything. Make sure the water's still working. All the electricity's still working. And usually there's a checklist when you perform the walkthrough. If everything is great, then you can get ready for the closing from there. But the walkthrough is critical, similar to the home inspection, because you want to make sure the property's in the same condition as you saw initially and during the home inspection.
Exactly. And a lot of those times, those walkthroughs are ways to kind of get things addressed, right? So if you see, the fridge is all of a sudden now not working, and when you went there, it was working, and it's part of your contract to get it worked, you go back to the seller, hey, the fridge is not working. Now they're obligated to have to replace that fridge. They can't be like, oh, well, it was working when you walked it through. Like, no, this fridge is not working. I need it replaced or credited or however you want to do that. So it's crucial to do those walkthroughs and thoroughly go through those walkthroughs. A lot of people, they get excited that they're getting a home and they don't pay attention to the little things that can end up biting them in the back end, right?
Correct. So buyers, they usually get emotional when they're going through the process of buying a house. And that's why agents are there, right? We're there to help them hold their hands throughout the process. And during the walkthrough, if they're too excited, oh, hey, closing is today, closing is tomorrow, I'm not worried about that. No, you do have to worry about it. What if on the deck there's a gaping large hole and you're just going to fix it yourself? It's not your responsibility. The seller has to take care of it. Another thing during the walkthrough is if you had a list of inspection items the seller was going to take care of, you have to make sure everything on that list is taken care of. Go through the check boxes and test everything.
And remember, I was just thinking about this when you were saying that. Let's say someone gets under contract. They're under contract. Their closing is the day before they close, and a major storm comes in and the damages the roof and puts a roof into that. Well, you're not responsible for getting that roof fixed because you haven't signed the contract to own the home just yet. So that seller it can kind of push your closing date back until they either get that fixed or figure out a way to do that with the insurance and all that. So if it's in that time frame of, something happens right before closing, it's still the seller's responsibility. Now, are they still under contract? Is that a way to jump out of ship or say, I don't want to be in this contract anymore if some major thing happens in between that time with closing?
So what usually happens in that case, again, that's extremely rare, but the seller's insurance company will be responsible for taking care of that. and then you will come to an agreement on how many days you need to extend it, or you could still close contingent on the seller's insurance company taking care of the art or repairs or whatever the case may be. So you just have to come to an agreement between buyer and seller if anything happened because of the storm.
And again, like we were telling you guys, why it's important to have a good agent, why it's important to have a good lending company, shit, even a good title company, right? So that being is because that time frame, first of all, you're going into it, it's a lot of emotions. If you're married and buying a house with your wife, or if you're just buying a house by yourself, you know how that can be a wave of emotions. You want to be able to pick the right people that are going to help you, guide you through that transaction and make it as smooth as possible.
Correct. The same applies to when you're selling your house. You want to make sure everything is done properly, it's marketed the right way, and it's put at the right price. When you're selling your house, if you put it at an extremely high price, it's not going to sell. But you don't want to lowball it at too low a price either. You're cutting yourself short. So you need the right agent when you're selling your house, because with the proper research, you can maximize the profit.
Yeah. So that's why, like, what this whole MBA thing, a lot of people are not considering all these things that come along with closing and with what needs to be done. So that's kind of circling back to the importance of having a really good realtor, like H2IO, shameless plug, right? So it's important to have somebody that's going to guide you into that direction, because all these things come up. No matter how much you think you know about the real estate market, no matter how much you think, hey, I got this is a breeze, I can just sign the contract and I don't need you, these are things that are going to come up.
And the main thing is, I mentioned it earlier, buyers and sellers, they always get emotional. It's a roller coaster like you experienced. So with an agent, we hold their hand and guide them through from the beginning all the way to closing, right? Mm-hmm. And make it much easier. And that example on the walkthrough, if you're going through a walkthrough, a buyer, they get so emotional, they're very happy. They don't care if they see a big hole on the deck. They'll say, oh, I'll take care of it. Well, no, we're here to make sure that the seller takes care of it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why all buyers and sellers need an agent to help guide them on the right way to handle everything.
No. And not for nothing as well, if you find your house, you get under contract, and you want to switch, you can't switch agents, but you can switch your lender. Correct. If you get some numbers from the agent that you don't like, you're within your obligation to go shop around and get another lender. Now, that can be up to the seller if they don't want to have to wait an extra week or an extra period to be able to close. But once you're under contract, you have those rights to go say, hey, look, things didn't work out with this lender, I want to go with this lender.
Well, actually, every time a buyer goes under contract, even if they have the pre-approval from letter A, I always advise buyers that, hey, shop around between letter A, B, and C and see who gives you the best deal. I understand they issued the pre-approval, but you got to make sure you're doing what's best for yourself and your family. Because even if letter A gave you the pre-approval, what if they're charging a much higher rate and in terms of closing costs between letter A, B, and C? Because they want to save the most money, get a lower payment, be charged less in closing costs. Exactly. So maybe you have to end up with letter B. Just tell them business is business. You want to make sure you pay less.
You want to get the best deals, best possible payments, best possible rate. And sometimes, you might even come back to your lender and say, hey, lender B is giving me, a half a point less than what you're giving me.
Yeah, exactly.
So, a lot of times they want to keep that business, right?
Yeah.
The other thing to look at too is unnecessary fees that some of the lenders might put in. Now, keep in mind, a lot of those things are also negotiable. Some are, standard, and that's what it is. But sometimes you want to look at, hey, how much is the lender charging me? Like, people forget that the disclosure sheet is so important to review, and honestly, pick with a fine-tooth comb, because that's your money that you're putting in. That's the money that you're going to need to close. And if you can cut down on some of these costs, do it.
And this is another thing you can always ask your agent about. A lot of buyers don't feel comfortable discussing their personal finances with their agent. Why not? Just get a second opinion. It's what I mentioned earlier. Your agent is there to help guide you, hold your hand throughout the transaction, and you may be a little emotional and you need someone to talk to you about it. Your agent can always help guide you because they have a lot of experience. They go through so many transactions. They can give you a second opinion and tell you, hey, this isn't the right lender to go with. Go with this lender instead. And they probably have a lot of relationships with lenders. Maybe they know a lender that they can refer you over to that can give you the best deal, the best rate, the most closing cost.
So what are some problems that you've come across from your experience during that closing period? What are some things that you would give advice on people to watch out for and to kind of prepare themselves for?
So sometimes I come across lenders that completely go MIA. They just, we expect an answer from them. I get it. Everyone knows busy. We all have a life. We all have business. We won't want to go on vacation. But when you're under a contract, we should all be transparent, have open communication, and most of all be honest. I've dealt with lenders that just go blank and then we're all waiting for the closing date and then they just decide to show up whenever they want to.
Yeah. For me, the best tip I'll give you, and this is from my latest transaction, right? I felt I got this lender through a referral, and we went through the whole process. Everything was great until we got to closing, and things just were annoying. They were not transparent. They weren't communicating. There were issues that were coming up that needed to be resolved, and I wasn't hearing back from them. So this was the first time I went through an experience with just a horrible lender. I mean, I've done a lot of transactions, and I've had good experiences. I've had not so good experiences, but this last thing was, it was horrible. And I'm not a person I'm a very patient person, and I can deal with a lot of crap. But this one was to the point where, it made my wife very uneasy and made me very uneasy. We had a sleepless nights for it because this was a house that we really wanted. This was the one that we were going to live in. And it just, for me, I was so committed to this lender that I didn't even bother to have 2 or 3 other lenders even in my pipeline to be like, you know what, screw you guys. Like, this deal's done with you guys. I'm going to go with B. So the one advice that I would give people is, even though you're committed and you got the pre-approval from this lender, talk to those other lenders because you're able to talk to them. So that one moment that something arises or you're not comfortable with this person, lender B is a phone call away, and they can start taking everything in and handling things for you.
And that's a mistake a lot of people make. They think, just because this lender's been with you for a week or two and they generated a pre-approval, you have to commit to them. And that's not true. Talk to other lenders. They may give you a lower rate and charge you less in closing costs.
In my experience, our lender, we were with him for 90 days to 120. We built a relationship. And in the end, it was just a horrible experience. And everything else was perfect. It was that experience of that lender that I wish I could tell you guys who they were and don't deal with them. If you want to know, just message me and I'll let you know. Do not use them if you're in the DLV area. But that I say that to say, like, everybody in the real estate transaction plays a key role to your experience. To if you're going to do this again, or if you're going to do that again, especially if you're not buying something with cash and you have to use the bank's money to go ahead and buy more property. You want somebody that's going to, A, have experience, B, that's going to be transparent with you, and C, just be there when you need them.
And be honest.
Honesty is key too. Like, you have to be honest with them, but you need somebody that's going to be there for you.
Correct. Exactly. Yep. So it always starts with getting pre-approved, and then it's always being at the closing table. That's the transaction, how it usually goes.
And I guess this is the other big mistake that people make that I've noticed, right? Someone gets a letter, they're pre-approved for $800,000, and they start shopping at homes for $800,000. I don't think that's the best way to go at it, right? So if I get a pre-approval for a certain amount, I want to dumb it down and try to go under with my pre-approval. Because You 3 months ago, you might have been approved for 800. Now you get to the final thing, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we can't give you that much." So try to
Stay within your means. Look at the monthly payment. They'll tell you the pre-approval, but look at the monthly payment. And most people ignore the interest rate too. Know what your budget is. A lot of people overlook that. And look at how much you pay out rent right now.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what your monthly bills are for everything from your internet to your utilities to other bills that you have on automated payment. You have to add it all up and see what makes sense for you before you go ahead and decide on what your real purchase price power is.
exactly.
Like you said, just because a letter tells you you're approved up to 800 or a million doesn't mean that's how much you should go up to. You want to make sense of your budget, and let's say you only want to pay a mortgage of $3,000. Well, ask the lender, okay, at this rate, I want to just pay $3,000. How much should I be qualified up to?
Exactly. And that is crucial. Like in looking for homes, like don't take your pre-approval amount and just be like, yeah, I'm gonna go look at homes at this price. It's just not a smart choice. You're gonna end up either falling in love with a house that you can't afford, and getting into a house that you can't afford, and then ultimately losing that house. You got to think all the steps before. Yes, fall in love with the house. Yes, get the dream home that you want, but do it within your means. You gotta be real with yourself. You gotta be honest and say, can I afford this?
Correct.
And a lot of times people, again, this whole transaction is an emotional transaction. You go off of emotion, and you got to try as hard as you can to not be as emotional.
Exactly. Try to read the fine print. Professionals always read the fine print when they work at their job. We'll help you read that fine print. Talk to your agent. Sometimes buyers come in with the mindset that their agent is just there to show them the house.
Mm-hmm.
They're there to help you the entire transaction.
Yeah.
So don't think just because they show the house and get you under contract, their job is done.
Yeah, exactly.
Great agents will help you until closing and thereafter. Terrible agents just collect a check and then disappear on you. But great agents stay with you even after the closing to make sure if there is a leak coming from the roof that they help you on the insurance claim to make sure that's safe.
And honestly, we have a slew of lenders that we can did from. I think it would be great to have a lender here.
Oh yeah,
and talk to them. So I think we should do that on the next episode.
Oh yeah, in the next episode, so we're having a lender come over from a small bank account. So stay tuned for the next episode if you want to learn more about that.
Yeah, and if you have any questions or something that you would want us to ask or something that you want to get answered, hit us on the message, hit us in the comments, and we'll try to get that filtered over. But I think it would be good for everybody to have a lender, somebody that does this, for 9 to 5, does this every day to kind of just ask them questions and kind of go from there.
Definitely. With me.
Yeah, so that's awesome. Well, this was some great information for today. Look, we're going to just end it here. Hit the follow and subscribe button.
For sure.
I'm Abel.
I'm Brian.
Hope you guys have a great day.
Enjoy your weekend.